Hello, everybody. I'm Nina Soden, urban fantasy author of the Blood Angel series and the Sector C series, and my guest today is Douglas Ford. He is the author of a recent collection of weird fiction called Ape in the Rain and Other Tales of the Macabre and Uncanny. His short stories have appeared in such venues as Dark Moon Digest, Tales to Terrify, Weird City, as well as The Best Hardcore Horror, volumes 3 and 4. His novella, The Reattachment, appeared in 2019, courtesy of Madness Heart Press. In The Harsh Light of Day, he sprinkles a little darkness into the lives of his students at the State College of Florida. So you are a teacher as well as a writer, which is awesome. So let's first talk about Ape in the Rain. Ape in the Rain, is that correct?
Ape in the Ring, yes.
Okay. So first I want to say he is about to tell you about this book, but if you want a chance to win it, make sure you like and subscribe and comment below. If you do not comment below on this video, I won't know you want a chance to win. So comment below so that we can get you in that drawing. All right, tell me about your new collection of stories.
So this is a collection of stories that I've written largely over the past decade that have appeared in a lot of mainly small press venues. And they do, as you say, fall into the category of weird fiction, horror fiction, although, you know, those categories tend to collapse. This is the cover, and it's a wonderfully designed cover it wasn't by me, but by John Baltusberger, who is the publisher and the, I guess, CEO of Madness Heart Press. And he kind of captured a carnivalesque atmosphere that is characteristic of the title story, Ape in the Ring. They tend to, the stories tend to gravitate around family themes and, you know,
family things, horror, weird family things.
Yes.
Okay.
Good, wholesome family values.
That's right.
You know, but issues like memory and identity and the horrors that emerge when people are confronted with their inner selves and some of the kinds of settings that are preoccupations for me, like theme parks and carnivals, but also old family homes, which I find to be, in some cases, some of the more horrifying kinds of settings, because you have to be confronted with your older self and you know, and face demons and ghosts that come from your past. I'm also terrified of fast food playground structures. I have I think those are you know, I have a story in here called What Goes In Must Come Out, which is was inspired when my kids were small, and we were in one of these, you know, off the highway kind of fast food restaurants. I can't remember what it was, you know, McDonald's or Burger King. And then they had this enormous play structure inside these serpentine structures. And, you know, my kid went into this thing and was gone for a really long time.
Yes.
And I started to have all sorts of anxieties about this. If she doesn't come out, how am I going to get her? I'd never fit into this thing. And I started having all these anxieties, like, what if there's a predator inside that? And I started, well, what kind of predator would it be? It'd have to be a very small one. And so I that kind of inspired that story, and all sorts of the worst possibilities come out.
Yes.
And which is, you know, exercising my own anxieties, I guess.
So how many stories are in this book? It sounds like a rather large collection.
It's not mammoth, and I should know that answer, but I would have to count. We have about 16 stories in this collection. Did a quick count.
Okay.
Like I said, I should know that.
And are they novellas? Are they true short stories? Where does that page range go?
They are true short stories. They range from, I think the shortest one is about 1,500 words.
Okay.
With a monster in a basement story, it was just 1,500 words, and going up to about 5 to 6,000 word range.
Okay. So something for everybody.
Oh, yeah.
It's a nice collection to just sit down and read when you're in line, or when you want to spend more time. You have some longer. That's nice.
Yes.
Okay. So why horror? Why this weird fiction? What draws you to that?
Well, I dedicated this collection to my parents, and I will read the dedication because I think it explains to some degree why horror. And I dedicate it to Mom and Dad for letting me stay up late to watch monster movies, and then jumping out at me from shadows as I walked the long hallway to my bedroom. And my parents are very, they're church going people, and they were hard. My mom said, "Oh my God, what did we do to you?"
Oh,
and
no.
I said, "No, it was great. That was perfect." Because that's a fond memory I have of watching Son of Frankenstein, before there was, DVDs or streaming, having to wait till it's on late, and somehow being alone in the bedroom and having my parents jump out at me. And I was delighted by that. I still think, wow, that was fun.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a certain childhood fascination with the dark, what comes out at you from the shadows, that I've never grown out of quite.
Yeah.
And and I also think I find horror to be incredibly cathartic, and especially in anxious times like these, with pandemics and political turmoil and upheaval. So I find it somehow soothing, in many ways, and comforting to know what's in the shadows. There's a line in a Clive Barker story called Dread that where there's a character who talks about how you have to touch the beast, because if you don't, or you have to find the beast, I think is how Clive Barker worded it. Otherwise, the beast finds you, and that's not a good thing. So horror fiction, I think, serves that kind of function. And I just want my favorite writers write horror, and I think it's the stuff I gravitate to when I read, and I like to write it.
Okay. So how long have you been writing? You said you've written these stories over a decade. So how long or when did you start writing?
Oh, well, I started writing when I was really small. And I owe a lot to my parents. My parents were, they in some ways they worry that they've inspired the worst elements of my fiction, but in some ways, but they haven't. They in many ways were very nurturing. So when I was a kid, before there was, I'm revealing my age, being several decades old, but before there was computers, or really before computers were in every household,
right?
I was like 5, and I wanted to create a newspaper because I thought newspaper reporters were really cool, like Clark Kent. And I always thought the coolest thing about Superman wasn't Superman, but it was Clark Kent. He got to work in a newspaper. I thought that was fascinating. So I created a newspaper in the garage, and I would take carbon paper and I would copy several copies, and I would go around the neighborhood selling these things.
Oh, that's awesome.
It was fun. And then as I became older and I started to understand genres of fiction, I would try to write short stories as a teenager, and they were horrible. And, I got my first rejection when I was about 18 from Isaac Asimov's science fiction magazine.
But you put yourself out there at 18. That's impressive.
Yeah. And so, and I wrote sporadically throughout my entire life. And I think it was really in the early 2000s that I really started to apply myself as a serious fiction writer. And I'm not a prolific writer. I'm not a fast writer. So it takes me a while to accumulate enough short stories to go into a book like collection, although I'm getting more prolific as I get older. But the oldest story in here goes back to the earlier 2000s. Ape in the Ring is an older story that has remained one of my favorites of my own.
Okay.
And but most of the stories, I think I became more prolific and started increasing my output in the last decade. So that's where the majority of them come. And I think to some degree, I'm probably the stereotypical writer who probably needed to experience more life before I could write fiction adequately. And so there's probably that too.
I can understand that. So tell us a little bit about Ape in the Ring, that story, not the book, not the collection, but that story. Why is it one of your favorites?
Because I love carnivals, and I had a neighbor when I was living in North Florida who told me a story about a carnival that came to North Florida, and his friend, who apparently one of the attractions was, and this sounds horrible. I mean, just all sorts of animal rights abuses and concern, just really ethical issues. But it was still a fascinating story to me that they had a chimpanzee, that if you wrestled with a chimpanzee and can last a few minutes with a chimpanzee, you get some kind of prize. I mean, this had to be a really seedy carnival, right?
Yeah.
And I'm sure there was a bit of, hyperbole in this and exaggeration, but I was fascinated by that. So I thought this has got to be a short story. And it went through several drafts before I could find really who the characters were who were going to this. And I realized that at the time, I was a new parent, and I thought there's some kind of parenting issue here that's playing out. And that kind of gave me the seed. And of course, if you read the story, it's not a chimpanzee. It's something much worse. And so much more horrible and dire. It's actually quite personal to the characters. So that's more or less it in a nutshell.
Okay. I think it sounds fascinating. And it doesn't sound like a whole lot of what I've read before. I do enjoy horror. And I know that there is a need for short stories because, especially with today's society and with how people are in need of instant gratification, I think short stories fill that need better than picking up a novel that's, 300 pages long, and somebody who sits down and wants to just be entertained in the moment may not be able to get into that. Now, I love a big book, but short stories fill a need that those just don't fill. So why do you gravitate, do you think, toward short stories as opposed to novels, or do you write novels as well?
I'm working on a novel. I'm about to finish a novel. I do find short stories to be there's something really gratifying about the mechanics of a short story and the way I think it goes back to Poe, who argued that, you should be able to finish a work of fiction within one sitting. And of course, you can't do that with it unless you're an amazingly quick reader. But I always, I think the single effect idea is as old as it is and time worn as it is, still to me means something. And I like the idea that a short story can provide a punch to somebody and provide that encapsulation of a feeling, of a moment. In the case of my genre, some kind of horror or uncanny, surreal experience that you carry away with you. And my favorite works, and many of my favorite works, that's what I get. Yeah. Like from Flannery O'Connor's A Good Man's Hard to Find, or Joyce Carol Oates' Where Are You Going, Where Have You Been? Those stories still, really have an impact for me. Where, Oates' Zombie is an amazing book, but it doesn't have quite that economy that one of her, a short story like, or Big Mama, one of her more recent stories, has, that I think is just amazing. Yeah. And I wish I could do that. each time I write a story, I want to do that. I want to have that effect on somebody.
Do you feel that there's a, I don't know, a trick to short stories? I've always found short stories harder to write. And I'm one of those people, I love backstory. I love giving all kinds of information. So my stories don't fit into a short story. But I've always found that short stories are harder to write than novels because you have to get that beginning, that middle, that end all in such a small period.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you feel gives you I don't know. I don't know exactly what I'm trying to say. What do you feel is the key to your success with so many short stories?
Well, if I can call it success, that's awesome. But I think for me, my process, I'm not a planner. I'm not a planner at
So you're a
all.
pantster. You don't plot.
Yes, I am. Very much so. Very much so. And part of it is somebody smarter than me has said this, and I can't remember who said this, that, you write, a writer writes sometimes because you want to know how the story ends. And that's me. I want to know what happens. And so I really, not to sound, like this is the spooky art here, but I like it when the characters start to talk to me, not that I hear voices too much, but I like when they start talking to me and start telling me what happened. And it's sort of a, like I said, it's kind of a spooky experience that speaks to my genre. But it also starts with a line. I gotta have an opening line, and opening lines are, how important opening lines are. You gotta hook somebody.
Yes.
So I can't get very far until I have that opening line.
Okay.
When I have it, and that's kind of what has solved a lot of writing problems for me, is realize I don't have an opening line, and I'm not the kind of writer who can just kind of go and then find it later. I got to start with it. I got to find it and write it several times over and over until I find it. Then it starts to kind of talk to me.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure I figured out writing novels myself, because I'm writing, this will be my first completed novel. I've started them before, and usually what happens is they turn into short stories, or I put them away, and then I realize I really got a short story here. Yeah. This is the first time, this one I'm working on. So I don't know if I know how to write a novel yet, until we'll see how that works out. But something like the process of a short story is working with the novel right now, which I know it's going to be done. And it's going to have that. I think it's going to be definitely a Doug Ford narrative, because it seems to have the elements that I like working with. Yeah. But we'll see.
So you would be surprised, or maybe you wouldn't, at how many authors tell me the characters talk in their head. I'm one included. My characters, once they start talking, the writing comes so easily. If they're not talking, nothing. So I get that completely. And I do the importance of an opening line. I mean, it can make or break whether or not somebody wants to read your story. So with that said, open up your book and read us an opening line of any of the stories. Just give me one or two of your opening lines.
Okay. All right. The middle child begins. I just opened this one. Chad learned that he had an older brother over Christmas break. And it's from the middle child. And this is one of the shorter ones where he realizes that the older brother has moved into his bedroom. Oh. And he's come back. And it's not a pleasant experience for him. It turns out his parents were, I don't want to ruin it.
Yeah, don't.
May have been dabbling in something they shouldn't have. Let's see. We have, I have a confession. Is a story that begins with, when he slid into bed with her, she welcomed his body and didn't even think of him as not alive, which is about, I guess we can call it sort of ghost sex. It sounds like at first, but it's really not. It turns into something else.
Okay. So your genre is horror, yes, but does it dabble in supernatural or paranormal?
Absolutely. Okay. The best for me, and this is where I wonder if my collection is a make or break with some people, is I don't necessarily gravitate toward monsters or revenants or supernatural creatures who are all explained. The ones that I respond to as a reader and the ones I like as a writer are ones that leave a lot of to your imagination about what they are.
Yeah.
In some cases, they may be projections of the character's self. In some cases, they are things that lie to you. In many cases, my monsters and ghosts lie to people about what they are.
Okay.
And I like that. And I like the uncertainty of that kind of fiction that doesn't always leave a reader in a safe space in terms of being able to name the beast. I think names are important, and especially in the novel I'm writing now, it's all about names. I like it when characters lie, and creatures of the night lie, because people lie, and are not always truthful with themselves.
Yeah.
So
kind of like the creature in the closet in Cujo.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. So you're writing a novel right now. Is it that same genre, same feel as your short stories?
Yes, absolutely. Although this one is a little bit more deliberately gothic in nature.
Okay.
I have a fictional county in Florida that a lot of my, not all of my fiction, but a lot of my fiction set in. So I'm exploring ways that this area county in Florida, which doesn't exist,
okay,
could be the scene of a more gothic narrative. And so I'm playing around with that. And
do you find
question.
Do you find that you put people you know or characteristics of people you know in your stories at all?
Yes, beware of writers. They will put you in their work.
That's right. That's right.
My mom, I keep talking about my parents, but my mom said to me, she gave me this great story idea one time, because she said, she was asking me about recently, cremation is a preoccupation with hers. And she told me one time, because my dad has a pacemaker, she said, I had this terrible dream because they can't put you in the oven with your things with batteries. She said that they called me and said I had to take it out of your father. And I went, oh, really? I took out my notebook. Tell me more. and so it's really funny how now she's realized, oh, I can give them ideas. When she tries to give me ideas, they don't work.
Right.
Because she's trying to give me an idea. But when people just talk, I love it.
When it comes organically.
Oh my God, I love that. I love it when people say things and don't realize that's a story right there.
Yes, I love that too. And life does inspire art in so many different ways. And for authors, it's just all around you. I think it was Stephen King that once said that if you're not seeing at least 10 to 15 story ideas every day when you're in your natural life, then you're not a writer. You're not noticing it enough to be an author. I was just like, and I don't know if that's exactly how he said it, but it was to that concept of you should be able to drive down the road and things and just pick up on that creative aspect of life.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, so when was the first time you actually considered yourself an author? Not just a writer, not just, oh, I have a hobby, I dabble in writing, but when did you first consider yourself an author? And what did that mean to you?
I don't know. That's a hard one to answer. Because what an author is versus a writer, there's all sorts of things in that. I guess when I saw my name mentioned in a review, I think, because it's the name, of course, so much of authorship is in the name, becomes the brand. And I didn't find the review. It was my brother found it and said, oh, you were in this was from the early 2000s. There was a review of an issue of Wicked Hollow that had a story in it. He said, you're mentioned in a review. And I was looking at that, almost thinking of that as a different person. So I guess that's the closest I can think of, is when you see yourself mentioned in a review. It's like, who's that?
Yeah.
It's like,
why do they have my name?
Yeah, it's surreal.
So speaking of reviews, Are you one of those authors that will actually go on to Amazon, Goodreads, and actually read your reviews, or do you avoid them like the plague?
I read them with great trepidation, but I think reviewers have been really kind to me. So I'm grateful to everybody who's reviewed my work and said nice things. And I'm so glad some people found nice things to say about them. So thank you to those
So
people who did that.
what authors do you typically get drawn to? What authors do you read over and over?
Shirley Jackson, even though, obviously, her work is, because she's no longer with us, is baked in. I still go back to her stuff. Joyce Carol Oates, I mentioned her before. I really love Joyce Carol Oates as a short story writer. I like her as a novelist too, but a short story writer, I get excited about Joyce Carol Oates' short fiction. Brian Evanson, Robert Aikman. Robert Aikman, I wish I could write a Robert Aikman story. I think a lot of ways, a lot of my fiction is an attempt to create a Robert Aikman kind of feeling of, just the ground is really not solid underneath you.
Yeah. That's a huge compliment to him. I mean, that getting inspiration from somebody to the point where you would like to emulate them is huge compliment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love Ramsey Campbell, Stephen King, of course. I love Stephen King, Clive Barker. And there's just so many. I'm reading a writer right now. I think you may know Rebecca Rowland's collection.
Yeah.
I think she wrote a wonderful, this is one of the best collections in small press right now that I have it with me. This is a wonderful book.
Yeah.
And people should read this, who like dark fiction.
So dark fiction, short stories, if you are out there and you're watching this and you like dark fiction, short stories, if you just like the horror and you just want to be intrigued by something, comment below so that you can get a chance to win his book. I think you will like it. I am definitely looking forward to reading it. I have got to pick this one up. So is there anything we haven't talked about that you'd like my viewers to know, either about you or about your stories?
I won't subject anybody to this, but I know the words to Grim Grinning Ghosts, the song in the Disney ride, Haunted Mansion, but I will not sing it. I can't do that to anybody. It's just trivia.
You can't.
Just so you know, I just like to brag about that.
You can't say that and then not prove it.
No.
Without it being on, without recording it, there's no proof. You could be lying like your monsters.
I know, but you can't know. The internet was shut down if I sang. It would just all the circuits would fry.
Douglas, that's just a tease. You're just teasing now.
I know. Give me some wine. Maybe.
Well, we should have done this later in the day. Had a little wine, then you would have sung. All right, that'll be the sequel to this interview.
Yes.
All right. So I like to end all of my interviews with the James Lipton Inside the Actors Studio Questionnaire. And I'm not sure if you know what that is or not, but it is 10 questions. It's a hot seat, so you can't think about the answers. Just answer the first answer that comes to mind. There are no wrong answers. So it's not like, we're going to be like, oh, he got that wrong. No wrong answers. It's all about you. All right. What is your favorite word?
Fallopian.
What is your least favorite word?
Ice.
What turns you on?
Intelligence.
What turns you off?
Okay. A bad drunk.
Okay. What sound or noise do you love?
Rain.
What sound or noise do you hate?
The sound of my students complaining about a grade.
Okay. What is your favorite curse word?
Fuck.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
Magician.
What profession would you not want to do?
Astronaut.
If heaven exists, what would you like to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gate?
Uh, here's the library.
Oh, yes. Okay, thank you. Okay, but one of your answers sparked another question that I have for you. So we're going back to
Okay.
interview style. You're a teacher
Yes.
at a university, at a state college.
Yeah.
You teach writing, I would imagine, creative writing?
Creative writing and literature and composition.
And how do your students react when they read your work? I assume they all know you're an author and have read your work.
Yeah, I don't assign them my work, but I do share with them when it's, I'll send them links if it's on a website and say they, just in case they're curious.
And what is the best reaction you've gotten?
I guess just generally like they didn't know I had it in me, I guess. It was the best reaction was a student who read The Reattachment, my novella, which begins with the Bucks losing, the Tampa Bay Bucks. I'm not really a big football fan, but it worked the beginning for reasons I can't go into. But she said, "Why do you hate the Bucks?" Because of course we're on the west coast of Central Florida. Why do you hate the Bucks? And I said, I don't. I really don't feel one way or the other about it.
As if your writing could cause that to happen.
Exactly.
That's awesome. Okay. Well, that's all I really wanted to know after hearing you mention that. I had forgotten to ask you about your teaching.
It's okay. I love my students don't really complain much. They're generally a happy bunch. So
that's good.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for doing this interview with me and spending your time with me. Again, I'm excited to do it. I love talking to other authors and getting this information out there and supporting other authors. And in that vein, in the description below, I will have links to where you can get copies of Douglas's books. And I recommend ordering them because, books are awesome and they make great gifts. So buy a copy for you and buy a copy for somebody else.
For someone you love.
For someone you love or just want to terrify.
There you go.
That works too. All right. Thank you so much. That is the end of the interview. I hope you all have a great day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.